meeting. If we could rise once again to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
republic which stands
one nation under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
Okay. So, Jean, again, if you could take the attendance. Thank you. It's the same people. Just to give you some context, Tom and I have been talking a lot about the library, when we're going to open. And we actually didn't think that the library was going to be in the kind of group of organizations, businesses, et cetera, that were going to open in phase one. Tom had, we had talked about it, but we didn't think that that was going to happen. But lo and behold, a couple of weeks ago, a change was made. And actually, in New York State, libraries are now in phase one. And so as you guys know, we have the Mid-Hudson Valley. We are part of the Mid-Hudson Valley in terms of the that spreadsheet, or what do you call it, that dashboard that the New York State government has put out in terms of opening. Mid-Hudson has opened phase one kind of institutions, organizations, et cetera. So that means the library will open. So a couple of weeks ago, Tom did put together a reopening plan. I read it. So he had really, even though we didn't think we were going to open, he was preparing for it. He put together a reopening plan. As I mentioned to you, he's going to give you all the details, and please ask a lot of questions, because I can imagine that the public is going to be interested in this. They're going to want to know, how are they going to be kept safe? They're going to ask us. We are not going to open until, I think, the 1st. And even when we do that, it's not for everybody, it's for staff. And then even when we open upon that, it's just curbside pickup. So just so you know. But I want to impress upon you guys to really listen and ask any questions. No question is a dumb question. Please feel free to just have a free-flowing discussion. As trustees, we need to have some level of comfort with this because we're going to be asked, as we should be. So with that said, Tom, why don't you tell us what your plan is?
Sure. Thank you, Deirdre. And I really want to thank Deirdre for being so available. I know she has 2 daughters to assist in terms of education and other obligations, but I did call Deirdre a lot and emailed her a lot, and she was on it. And she was always pleasant, and thank you for that, Deirdre. But it was a pleasure. It was just working with you, and it's been really good. And frankly, it has been challenging. But I have to say, without the support and the ideas, the frank discussion that the department heads have had, we meet every Monday at 11:30, and the meeting can go for the shortest was an hour, but most of them last for about 2 hours. And we talk about how we are providing virtual electronic services, and as we started to get closer to reopening, we discussed a lot of issues surrounding reopening. So the department heads have been great, and the line staff, when pulled into play, have been great as well. Before I get into the plan, I just want to share with you something that I'm very excited about that we're about to do, and that is in anticipation of opening, despite the fact that we have a plan and we're working within the guidelines as suggested by the governor, we have a survey, and we are about to send that survey out maybe as soon as tomorrow. It'll be in English and in Spanish, and it really is asking the public, how are you using the library? What works? What doesn't? what are your concerns as you look at the library reopening? You know, and it's really very good. And I have to say, we borrowed it from another library and made changes. But the county libraries have been terrific. We meet also every week Thursday, and we share ideas, information, and documents. And so while we have our idea and our plans, our survey will be going out to the community, and we want to know what they think, and we'll share that with you. I intend to reach out to Mayor Noam Bramson. He, I believe, every week does a e-blast, and I'm hoping he might mention the library and its survey. And I'm planning to reach out to Superintendent Laura Fajo and ask her in her e-blast if she would mention our survey, so we get great coverage so people can tell us what their experiences are now and what their expectations are in the future. So, okay, I put a plug in for that. But I do want to mention, and I will share this document with you at the conclusion of the meeting, but I did put together a reentry plan. And again, it was, to be honest with you, it was a combination of documents put together by other libraries, along with things that are specific to our library. I've shared it with Deirdre, I've shared it with the department heads. It looks good, but I also think it will be a work in progress where we will be making changes. And the document basically begins with phase 1, which means the library is open to the staff, but not the public. And it includes the introduction of curbside service, and we believe delivery service to homebound, medically fragile, and some seniors. And then we'll move on to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5, which is restoration to where we were before we closed on March 13th. I have no idea when we'll reach that, nor does anyone else. Quite frankly, I'm not quite sure when phase 1 will end, but phase 1 will mean that on June 1st, next Monday, our staff will be reintroduced to the library. We will be following the governor's guidelines, and we will have 50% of the staff in the building, typically that are in the building. They will be in the building on that Monday at 9 o'clock. A PPE will be administered. We'll be taking temperatures of the staff. And then we'll have a meeting in our theater, properly socially distancing, so that we can answer questions. And the staff that will be there that day will be the department heads, including myself. It will include the administration office. It will include our library, full-time library circulation clerks, our tech services staff, and our pages. And the idea behind that is we have bins and bins and bins of material returned to us through the book drop, and also bins of Westchester Library material that we never got to once we shut our doors. And our staff will be in the process of discharging that material, honoring holds for local residents, and putting material back on the shelf, as well as our staff will begin the process of catching up on all the library print material and non-print material that has arrived in the interim, so that we can get it. Yes.
So I have a question, and Chuck has a question.
Yep.
So Chuck, why don't you go first, and then I'll go.
Sure, thank you. I have two questions. One is number one, thank you for all the work that's gone into this. This is incredibly complicated, and I'm sure you've spent hours and hours on it. And just one question, the 50%, has there been any consultation with, I don't know if it's like the Westchester Library Association or like medical professionals around, like, is 50% the right number? I just know, like, where I work, they're thinking about, it's a different environment, it's a tall building, and you've got, you know, more elevator access, but it's like they're talking like 10% in phase 1. And so I'm just curious of the 50%, how we feel about, it's obviously a big building, so there's a lot of space, so it seems maybe that's fine. And then my second question is, how is the union rep engaged in this discussion? And, are they feeling good about it? Those are my two questions.
They're good
Okay,
questions.
wait, I'm
Chuck.
going to tell you my question and you might wrap it all in. My
All right.
question was kind of what are the plans for keeping people 6 feet apart even on
Yeah.
that first day? I mean, because I imagine everybody comes to the door and so what are the ideas for keeping people 6 feet apart? And I mean, at this point, nobody's allowed anywhere without a mask. So
That's for sure. They're all really good questions. And before I answer that, let me take a step back because I think I should have said this from the beginning. But I was jumping into the details. But the big picture is safety of the staff is crucial. It's our first priority. So we need to take care of ourselves so we can function successfully as a library and function in our personal lives. And everything we're doing is predicated on that. And it's the major thrust of the Westchester Library System's sort of reentry effort too, safety, which means having all the appropriate PPE for staff. And to next answer Deirdre's question, when we get into the building, we have started the conversations about social distancing. First thing we've done is we purchased almost 20 sneeze guards so we can use them appropriately. We are planning to make certain in each of our work areas that there is distance as we do our functions. And in some instances, some of the study rooms on the second floor, which will not be open to the public for a long time, will be given to staff so that they can use that essentially as their office, which will make for a healthier environment. So, it's really a priority. All 3 custodians will be in the building on that first day because we anticipate there's going to be a lot of moving of furniture, putting away furniture, recreating offices in different places. So we've talked about, routines in terms of having meetings. We will have to socially distance if we meet. We may have conference call meetings. We may do Zoom meetings in the building. So we're definitely working towards making certain that we follow the guidelines and are safe. We have plenty of cloth masks. We purchased shields and we're going to get more. We have sanitizer, we have wipes. We're creating signs in the building to remind people and for the public when someday they arrive. We're creating, like supermarkets, suggested pathways to go down an aisle to pick up material. So that's truly important. Second issue, I think Chuck asked the question, what is our union folks' input? Have they had input? And actually they have. Our union president is our lead custodian, Rob Florin, and he's great to work with. He's thoughtful and he understands what we're talking about. We spoke actually today for about half an hour, 45 minutes. He is very comfortable with what we're doing because basically what I say is safety first. We're going to go slow. We're going to go carefully. We're going to, in many instances, we in terms of particulars, we don't know what we're doing, and we'll find out when we get there. And it's been great. We're talking about restrooms, how we handle restrooms. I've asked Rob to look into making sure we have the best air filters for the building. And he confirmed that we have many good ones. We may have to replace some others. We may need to replace filters on an ongoing basis to keep the building healthy. So it's been positive. And our department heads are all union members except for one. And they've also are very mindful of what's appropriate. So I can say very comfortably, what we're doing is being done collectively, not individually. And the staff is comfortable with what I would like to do, but they're also comfortable with how the board has approached this. There have been some public libraries, not to be named, where the governing bodies have pushed them to do things that maybe haven't been great. For example, one library opened for curbside delivery earlier. It was illegal, but they forced it, so it happened. And other libraries are getting pushback about, when to open, et cetera. But I have to say, Deirdre and the board have been very supportive of us being careful and safe and slow. And Chuck's first question was the 50% rule. We have over 70 employees. We're not anticipating having 35 in the building at any one time. We're anticipating having a much smaller number. And we're also looking at staff members, in many instances, working maybe up to half the time in the building and doing things at home. And there are staff members who can do most of their job at home. And I've been frankly encouraging those staff members. One of our staff members, our archivist, David Rose, I've been in contact with him. I've been pulling collections for him to work on at his house, and he's done a great job. He's accessioned a number of important manuscript groups, and he's going to continue to do that. And he's going to come in on an infrequent basis, but will come in to claim materials. We are trying to find a way to keep everybody safe and not overload the building. A lot of words there.
Daniel,
Thank you.
Daniel has a question.
It was a lot of information, so I don't know if you covered it. How are you? I saw that the Mount Vernon Public Library purchased a machine that specifically sanitizes and disinfects book and reading material. It looks like a Chromebook rack where you can stick the books in, you close it, and it beams this light and this whole system. Is that something that we would look into, or how are we sanitizing material when it's being returned?
Good question, Daniel. I can't speak for Mount Vernon. They have a new director there who I really haven't met. But I can tell you, first of all, we're buying a disinfecting machine, not a huge one, but one that we can use, and our custodians will be active throughout the building, even when it's just staff. As far as disinfecting materials with that machine, to be honest with you, Daniel, what we're doing is what the Westchester Library System is recommending, which is anything that comes back is going to be in quarantine for 72 hours, will be left alone. And at that point in time, we will then take the material, have gloves, have mask, and discharge it and have it reshelved into the library. Currently, we have bins and bins of books in our meeting room because we did not close our book drop, even though WLS recommended it. Many libraries did not, and frankly, I think it was the right decision for us because a lot of our materials have been sitting for a month or more, so we know they're safe. On an ongoing basis, when people return material, while we're in phase one, it will only be through the book drop. And when it arrives in the book drop, it will be put away, labeled, and we will not touch it for 72 hours. When we reopen, we will have essentially an interior book drop. I do not want anybody dropping a book on the circulation desk. They have to put it in the book drop, and then again, it will be emptied and held for 72 hours.
Cool.
Corey has a question.
Yep.
So on our operating business, we attacked it where we have developed for our summer camp a COVID fee because the expenses of actually making our camp, suitable to be in compliance with COVID-19, we had to incur a lot of expenses, which we passed on to the campers' parents. So my question is, my assumption is that we are accruing a lot of expenses to make sure that we are COVID-19 ready? And are we capturing those expenses anywhere so we can understand what the implications are? Similar to 9/11, where there was a 9/11 fee because you had to change the way you do business from the travel industry side.
It's a good question, Corey. Right. This COVID-19 has really cut both ways. We certainly have accrued expenses, certainly in regards to the purchase of PPE, et cetera. But we've also saved money. We certainly had very few, our utility bills were far diminished, and other areas as well. No overtime, of course, was allocated. So it really cuts both ways. We are trying to keep our expenses. Jean, our administrative assistant, has had experience. As you will recall, folks, New Rochelle was unfortunately visited by a hurricane about 5-6 years ago. Which one was it? Isabel? I can't recall the name, but FEMA did come to us, and we had all the expenses characterized, and we did receive reimbursement for staying open later, for damages we sustained to our roofs. So we are keeping track of that with the idea that we want to know what happened, and we can relate it to the board, and also in the hopes that there may be some financial relief, maybe from the federal government.
Could I make a comment?
Francis, Whitney had her hand raised. So can Whitney go, and then you can go, Francis?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Avec plaisir. A lot of pleasure.
Thanks. It's quick. I'm just curious if, Tom, if you could just explain or describe how curbside pickup works.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. To be honest with you, Whitney, prior to this call, I had a 45-minute conversation with Kira Aiello, who's head of adult services, and is the person that I have charged with managing the curbside delivery process. And we're still working it out. What's been so interesting about our weekly meetings with county directors, there are a few libraries that have started. One of them, Chappaqua, started on Tuesday, and the director is happy to share, and she gave us information, and I've shared it with Kira and the adult services staff and the circulation staff. But what we're thinking about, Whitney, is basically creating a direct phone number as well as an email address for the public to reach out to us if they want to consult with us directly about, they want particular titles or they want genre. We're also encouraging the public to use the WLS integrated library system, Evergreen, to place holds. And when the holds are placed, or when we have these consultations via email or phone, we can pull the material, make sure that it's on hold, properly bag the material, and we're planning to basically set up windows of time every day so that the public we can have a conversation with the public. You can come anytime between 1 and 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. Please tell us the time you'd like to come so we can have everything ready. And we will have, at the appropriate time, a cart outside the library entrance on Lawton Street, which is an easy drive up. And we can exchange, we can allow people in cars to take the material. We can pop it in their trunk, which is happening a lot, apparently, in Chappaqua. People can get out of the car and get it. But we're not discouraging our walk-up public because, as you folks all know, a large majority of our most faithful patrons are people who are in the neighborhood and can walk up, and they can easily walk up and grab the bag with the material in it and then go off. you know, and enjoy the material. We're still working out the details, but that and the broadest of brushes is how we're anticipating doing it. We will not turn people away if they don't call or make an appointment. We will encourage them to do so, but you know, we'll roll with it, you know, because we have to, and that's what we've always done.
Thank you. That's really interesting. It's like a drive-through, like Taco Bell, but you get your library books.
It's healthier.
Yeah, and healthier. Yeah. Thanks. And I just made a quick comment to the group, just that I was wondering that, you know, librarians are now returning to work and therefore are essential workers. And I wonder if there's anything we can do to recognize them and just.
So Tom?
Yes, Deirdre. Deirdre has been kindly, gently, but insistently asking me to give the names. And actually today, the last department head gave me the names of the people. And actually I have an email ready that I could send to you tonight.
Okay.
Today was just so busy.
So this is remember we had said, this is what I had emailed the team,
Yes.
you guys about. So, I mean, that's one question, but then, and in the same vein, we'll figure out how to recognize our essential workers who are going back. Thank you, Tom.
No, but yes, I have the listing. And really, our staff, you know, they have made me very proud because all of this is just so darn new, you know, and they've stretched themselves and they've, the mindset was always, what are we doing? How can we do it better? What is somebody else doing that we can copy? It's been a very interesting, just as the director, to see people sort of stretch themselves and just do things out of the box, and I think it's been successful. We know we've done well. We can do better, and we will continue to do all these e-resource virtual efforts, even while we're in the building and even when we're open.
Francis had a question?
Not a question and then a comment. Let me begin by really paying a glowing tribute to Tom and the staff. I think they've been exceptionally innovative, resourceful during these very trying times. I have been following all of the discussions, both in the board as well as in the PLDA about the reopening. It's a very controversial issue. There's no unified view on that. And I think part of the problem is that there's been lack of clarity, clear-cut clarity from on high on that. So the libraries quite often didn't quite know whether they were in phase one or whether they were supposed to do website or not to do that or to do this. A lot of uncertainty discussions. But I think slowly the air is beginning to clear. I think when you look at the 30 or 40 libraries as a whole, I think our own library has been doing exceptionally well, and others are quite aware of that. There are two trends when you look at the discussion on reopening, both at the board level and at the PLDA. One is that there is need to have a unified approach. We all libraries, we serve the same people. We should have a unified approach. This is good for the public to know that this is our library. They don't care whether it is New Rochelle or Chappaqua or what. This is a library service. So there should be a unified approach, policies and public statements, etc. And also, in addition to that, there is also the individual situations that the libraries have to face. And so while the unified approach is appealing, that does not really cater to many of the libraries that face different situations. I think our board and our library have been very progressive. There are other boards and other libraries that are very, 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 very conservative. They're not even taking any of the steps we are talking about. There was a discussion this morning, for example, about the public use of the library toilets for the public. I mean, boy, the views were all over the place. That is a very important issue. Do we open the public, the toilet to the public, or don't we? And that, should we have a unified approach on that, or should we just leave it to the libraries to do it?
Well,
So
if I can,
I'm just sort of giving the kind of trends that were emerging in the discussions, both at the board and the. But the question I want to ask Tom is, have you coordinated your reopening policies with the neighboring libraries so that there's some kind of quote unquote regional unified approach, so that people in Larchmont and people in Mount Vernon or Pelham
yes, actually,
approaching the reopening issue pretty much the same way?
I would say yes, Francis. There is not a library yet that is open to the public, and we expect that we will not open to the public until we move into another phase. Relative to the idea of coordinating these major milestones together, we actually did as a group, not everybody, of course, but a lot of us had set June 1st as the date that we re-enter the building, and June 15th as the date we start curbside delivery.
Yeah,
and
right.
I can tell you, Larchmont has signed on, White Plains has signed on, I believe Scarsdale is also in agreement. I think Pelham is too. So we understand that patrons are confused now, like they would be, because it's such a strange moment in time. So our thought was, as you said, if we could try to work together and as much as possible coordinate these milestone events together, then we think we're stronger individually and collectively. Now, the next big date that we will have to decide upon is when we open to the public, even in a limited fashion. We haven't gotten there yet because, we're obviously very far away, but it may come, and New Rochelle will be part of the conversation to try to find that balance. And I just want to talk about the restrooms because it's a topic that Deirdre and I have been having one of our many conversation strings about, believe it or not. Last year, Deirdre and I went to talk to the city, Chuck Strom and Bill Zimmerman, Chuck being the city manager, of course, and Bill being the head of Parks and Rec. And our goal was to come up with a solution that would open the restrooms in the library kiosk on Ruby D Library Green. And we reached an accommodation where we would share the cost of opening the restrooms, once warm weather has arrived, and it would last till, I believe, Columbus Day. So I reached out to Chuck late last week with Deirdre's agreement, and I said, what's going on with the restrooms? And he circled back to me and said, are you folks ready to share the cost like you agreed, which was $7,000? And Deirdre and I said, absolutely, because the public can't get into our facility, we're closed, but if we can have a restroom outside that the city and the library would co-jointly, be responsible financially. The library would manage the restrooms. I believe they would be doing the hiring.
They will clean them. They will manage them. They will have the lock. We could have a copy. We just are sharing the cost because we know that, we had planned that we would be having, of course, the market and all that stuff. And we get a lot of traffic. But that's not happening. But we still won't even have our bathrooms. I wonder if we should I don't think they'll open them unless we share the cost with them.
Oh, they won't. They already said that. Yeah. I think it's money well spent because we're serving the public. I know now people who are on the green are stuck and they're making decisions that, are not in
Impact our
the interest of
building.
the public health. Yeah.
And impact our building.
Yes, yes, oh, yes. So we think this is a great solution. And quite frankly, if you are familiar with the amount of the cost it takes to maintain the restroom, you know, so keeping supplies in, having somebody clean it, whether it be our staff or our nighttime cleaners, it's pretty expensive. We think this is a great solution, and it keeps our building safe for a period of time until we're ready to take that next step.
So even when we take that next step, we talk, you know, there's curbside, you're not allowed in the building, the bathrooms will be closed. And even, you know, we'll get there when we get there, but having the bathrooms open is a big deal because you can't, you know, we'd have to clean after them. We'd have, like, we could let somebody, we could do it by the keys, but then somebody needs to clean after. So that's a whole discussion in itself when we get to that discussion.
I will say our security guard contracting firm, who's been great, I've spoken to them and said, you know, we've used you in a certain way. We want to use your guards to, you know, to be the greeter when people enter the library, the staff, and also to sort of, once we open to the public, make sure that people are wearing masks. Make certain that when the public restrooms are open, we're going to try to regulate, you know, maybe 1 or 2 people per facility, which is not an easy thing to do. Now, I can't ask them to clean it, but if we can regulate it and manage it so that it's safe, that's something.
I just want to commend Tom again for this idea of the questionnaire. I like it very much. I think this is one way of finding out what the public thinks and how they want to be served. I think that's very good, and I look forward to the results of that.
You know what? We're getting the Spanish part of it done as we speak, and I hope to have it ready tomorrow so I can reach out to the mayor and the superintendent. But I'll send you tonight the English version, and just see I think it's really good. And again, you know, Nikki Fudge and Barbara worked on it, and you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I thank the libraries that have done it before. We made some modifications, and the outcome is we will know what people want. Hopefully, exactly. If they take the time to respond.
Exactly.
So, Deirdre, there's a personnel side of this, but I think I've talked about the operational side, but I'm happy to answer more questions.
Anybody have any questions, concerns? In terms of the personnel side of it, is it something that we can discuss here?
Yeah, we can. It's basic library policy. There's no discussion of names. It's just our policy as we're going forward. It's a policy that that Deirdre has approved, and our department heads also. And basically, to sort of recap, when we closed, we of course paid our full-time staff, but we made the decision to pay our part-time or hourly staff a certain amount based on an average of their previous 3 months of work. And honestly, it was really a tremendous thing we did to support our staff who've been supporting us and working for us, many of them for countless years. However, circumstances are changing when we reopen. When we reopen, as you folks know, we have to keep the building sort of leanly populated, and B, with that in mind, we will not need all the part-times. We are saying that we cannot continue to pay the part-time staff that are not needed the wage that we had agreed upon. And to that end, I've worked with the department heads to come up with a list of the part-time staff that we will ask to come into the building with us on the appropriate occasions, nearly all of them will be working greatly reduced hours. There will not be one person who will be working the same hours they had worked prior to the closing, and many of them will be working less than half. But they're people that we need to do certain tasks. However, there are staff that we just cannot use, particularly people in public service, our part-time librarians in children's and adult services. And let me just get the statistic. We will be bringing in, I believe, 18 part-time staff members who again will be working at far reduced hours. But there are 13 staff members who we cannot use, unfortunately, any longer. And it's not appropriate to pay people once we reopened. It's just not, we believe it's not acceptable to the community, and it's not fair to the staff that are working. So I have reached out to
Does
our
everybody
attorney.
get that? Does everybody understand the distinction?
Yeah, I get it. I don't know that I agree with it.
So
I get it,
when
but I'm
we
not
were
sure I
closed,
agree with it.
yeah. So when the building was closed, we paid them because they could not work. Now the building is open.
Yeah.
They can work, but we wouldn't hire them under these circumstances with an open building because we're not going to use it as much. The hours are not going to be as much for a while. So we wouldn't be paying them anyway. Does that make sense?
No, but I guess the thing that's in my mind, and maybe I'm off base, but I guess one question becomes, how do you select who's going to come back and who's not? Like, I'm almost in some level, a proponent of paying people until we get back to normal operations, and everybody has the option to come to work.
We don't
but
have
I
enough
realize
work
that
for them.
No, when we resume normal operations, we will. I mean from like now until we resume normal operations. But I realize there's an issue of that, they don't get to choose whether they're the ones that come in or they don't. So some people would be working, some wouldn't. But I don't know, I'd open up to the floor if people have other opinions.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Does that mean that people are getting laid off? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Is this
Yeah,
Yes.
but then it's unfair to the
Okay.
people who are working. So we're going to have some people who are working, who are getting paid, but then who are not working, who are not getting paid, and we don't know when they'll be working. We don't know when they'd come in.
The arrangement, we don't. And the arrangement that we made, Deirdre and I discussed, for the staff members who fall into that category of being laid off, and I'll define what laid off means in the context of our labor attorney. For those, what we believe at this point are 13 staff members, we will give them 2 weeks of their pay, and then they will have the ability to collect unemployment. As part of the letter that we have drafted and are ready to send out, if we do get approval, we will also give them the information to file for unemployment. And we are hoping that we can bring them back at some point in time. But when I brought this issue to the attorney said, I said, what's the difference between a layoff and a furlough? And he said, legally, a furlough is when you tell somebody, we are asking you not to come in, but we are promising you that you will come back, and that you will come back at a certain date with certain hours. We cannot make that promise. We don't know. So he advised us for those staff members that will not be working, that we cannot use, that we have to essentially lay them off by sort of disestablishing the position by board resolution at the June meeting. As I said, they will receive 2 weeks of pay, and they will be able to collect. And they may come back at some point. I hope they do,
However,
because they've been, and many of them are contributors.
but however, if
Deirdre?
the board feels, if you guys feel like we should, can you hear me? If you guys feel like we should keep them,
Yeah.
let's
Yes.
talk about it. I'm happy to have that discussion.
No, first of all,
about-
does it impose an acceptable financial burden? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Yes.
think it
Hello?
imposes a financial burden.
Yeah,
we already
no,
have
just-
the budget. We already have the budget to pay these people.
Exactly. I mean, if you kept them for, let's say, sorry, Chuck. I mean, if you kept them for, let's say, two months, while the air clears, would that be an unacceptable burden on the staff? Because these are trying times for everybody. It's a certain humanity, I think, would be called
So
for.
Tom,
I think.
Tom, what was your thought about why you wanted to let them, given what he just said, what was your thought about why you felt they should be let go? Given what Francis
Well, to
said,
be
kind
honest
of
with
why
you,
did
I
you?
was of a similar mind. Right. Can you hear me? Am I heard?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's okay. I wasn't certain. All right. Originally, I was of the same mindset, but we discussed it in the department's heads meeting, and they felt there was a certain unfairness to paying part-time people for not coming in, whereas the part-time people that did come in, we're not getting the same amount of money. And frankly, we were sensitive to what the community might say. We were fairly certain the community would support our paying people while we were closed, but to pay people while we're open, we thought may not be looked upon favorably by our residents.
Daniel?
Can I say something?
I mean,
Yeah,
my
go.
counter to that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
So in my opinion, I think that,
Oh,
can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
In my opinion, I think it would be best that I think that we should come up with the schedule and where we are rotating the part-time staff. I know other places have done it. NYU did it with their part-time staff. I know because I have friends that work there. Other companies have done that where they're rotating their part-time staff, whether, week A, these group of people are doing X amount of hours, and then group B is doing it the following week, but yet you can still compensate the average of hours or whatever. I mean, there's a strategic way of doing it. It's already in the budget. I'm more than certain that we're going to get to a quote unquote normal stance where we start beginning to do it. I know we'll take some time, probably 2 months, 3 months, who knows? But I think that
Might be longer.
or longer, but going through that process and seeing what rotation that can be done before making this decision immediately, where we can then probably look at it after we do a trial and error and say, hey, we need this, change another strategic approach to it with the part-time staff. That's just my thing.
So,
That sounds like a good
question.
idea, Sarah.
So rotating them, would you still pay them based on the hours worked, or would you do an average? Because if they were just paid based on the hours work and there were more people in the rotation, then everybody would be making significantly less.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a problem. I mean,
I would assume the rotation would have to be something even. If you know that you have 2 employees that both work 10 hours a week, and then, you just really have, there's a mathematical approach to it that we would have to look at on what that part-time employee does A make the same hours as B versus C versus D, and seeing how we do that. And then we can answer that question to say, do we justify and pay these employees who are doing 3 or 4 hours less? Do we pay that out? Or do we do that evenly across the board because we're rotating individuals? And if there's any work that can possibly be done at home, that we can probably figure something out to justify the rotation just to make up those hours, then we can look at that too as what internal mechanisms or external, either on a computer, blogging, books, or I don't know. But if there's anything that can be done to justify the hours that people may lose.
The problem is that, just if I could say,
Yeah.
we are struggling finding work for all of our full-time staff and in keeping the building appropriately depopulated. You know what I mean? I understand your point of view because it's one that I certainly initially shared, but I think it's really extremely challenging to be able to come up with this matrix. And the other issue is a lot of our part-time staff their jobs aren't set to work at home, and it's hard for us to find work for our full-time staff being home.
Beth?
It's a struggle.
I think also we're going to have to, if we go that route, I think also we're going to have to get buy-in from the department heads, because they're going to have to manage the people who are working and not working and kind of the issues that can bring up. I'm sorry, Beth, go ahead. Beth?
Can you hear me? You hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can hear me okay? Okay, sorry. Number one, if they stay home, can they collect unemployment? Did we get any or file for any of that PPP money? Are we allowed to? And the third is, isn't it smart maybe not to rotate people so much? The less of certain people is better than a rotation of many different people coming in there. I don't
Beth, I want to respond to the question about unemployment. They certainly can apply. And quite frankly, if we bring people back at a reduced hour, the people that the part-timers, they will be making far less in the short-term future and maybe even further out than the people who are given the 2-week severance and the ability to collect unemployment. And that is if we eschew the formula of continuing to pay our part-timers, whether they work or they only work certain hours, that we pay them on that formula, which was the average of the previous 3 months of work.
And maybe I don't know, but the PPP money, is the library was not able to request any of that to pay
We've
employees?
We've gotten some donations. We've gotten 100 free masks. We've gotten, that was through the city volunteer coordinator, who's done a great job. We've gotten a hand sanitizer. I'm not familiar with any, I haven't seen any grants for that. But as I said earlier in response to Corey's question, we're keeping track of our expenses in this area, and we're hoping that the federal government or maybe somebody else will present an opportunity for us to seek some level of reimbursement.
But the PPP,
I think that
FYI, the PPP we don't fit into that area.
No.
We're government.
we're not a small business, yeah. So
We're not a not-for-profit or a small business.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't qualify.
I have a question.
Go.
I have 2 questions. Well, a comment. My heart breaks to think about layoffs. That's just like my visceral emotional reaction. As a pragmatic professional and trustee, I also feel like perhaps unemployment might benefit folks who, you know, have uncertainty, who would get paid less, as Sarah pointed out. And, you know, in 6 or 8 months, when you know, a year from now, there's the possibility that we may need part-time folks and they could apply again and get rehired. But, you know, I can see Tom's point. I can see that you've probably, you know, gone over and over and over different scenarios to see what makes sense. And I think, you know, practically speaking, it makes sense that if you know, if there are people who are on the payroll who are not working and who, you know, through no fault of their own can't work, they are eligible for unemployment and they can collect unemployment. Unlike this scenario where maybe you have them working for, you know, they work 15 hours, 20 hours a week, and now they're working 3 hours a week.
Exactly.
It's not just to keep them as an employee. It won't benefit them more than allowing them to collect unemployment. That was just my comment. And then my next question is kind of a little bit different, which is, what if, just remind me of what protocol would be should somebody contract COVID during this time. Will you shut down? Will you alert everybody? What's the plan there?
It's a great question. We have to notify the county health department and the CDC. We may have to, certainly the people who were in contact with the person who had it will have to self-quarantine. It will be a handicap. Yeah, it will be. It's very anxiety provoking. Yeah.
Are we doing testing before people return?
Sorry. Can I just finish my one comment was to combine the two things that I'm asking about, which is, in the event that suddenly, you know, the 10 people say you have on any given day, I don't know how many people per day you will have in the building together, but hypothetically one of them comes down with COVID and you have 6 or 10 people or whatever the number is, and they're all now required to be in quarantine. This is related to my question about like letting people go and collect unemployment instead of keeping them on the payroll. What will you do? Do you have enough people in reserve to operate even, you know, I'm just asking this scenario is, you know, it's not a lot of people, but the likelihood of them being exposed is higher than anybody else. Who would step in and take on that work if now we let people go and there aren't, you know, backup people?
It's a great question. It's one of the, you know, I'm not a worrier, but that scenario certainly gives me pause. And what we would hope to do is the people who needed to self-quarantine would, and we do have enough people to manage, but if we had a series of incidents, it could mean that we would have to close. And this is something that has been discussed in county directors meetings, and everyone's a little, it's a kind of an overwhelming thought that we gear up to open and then we have incidents of COVID-19 among the staff, which might mean we might need to close again. And I just want to take a step back to Whitney's comment about layoffs and how it might benefit people economically. Our board stance to keep people, our part-timers, on the payroll at the wage that they were essentially earning was really a tremendous humanitarian gesture, and one that was not entirely imitated throughout the county. There are many libraries, and Francis, you've attended the meetings, you've heard. There are many, many libraries that at the onset of this let their part-timers go and encourage them to collect unemployment. I mean, I think I'm very proud that we did not do so. And what I'm proposing tonight is done with more than a small amount of reluctance. But it does seem in many ways a practical and fair solution. I mean, fair is a relative word, but that's sort of where myself and the department heads, after lots of conversation, ended up.
Thank you.
I just like to make 2 points, and I appreciate that this is like a really hard decision, and I'm sure Tom and you and the department heads, and I'm sure a ton of hemming and hawing and thought has gone into this. There's just 2 points I want to make though. Number one is I think, and this is like stepping back from like a very macro perspective, like as a country, we're faced with this situation where we've got like an exploding tens of millions of people on the unemployment rolls. Yeah. I'm of the belief that if you're an organization and you can financially afford to keep people off of the unemployment rolls, you should do it, because it's not just about us, it's about like our region and our country. And so I realize that there's complexities involved in managing this with the staff of who's coming in and who's not, which I realize are huge and complicated, but I just want to make that one point. And we are an organization that's in a position financially to do that. The other thing that I would highlight, and I can't foretell the future. If I could, I wouldn't be probably doing this. But I look to, I work at a global company, and things are looking, frankly, more positive more quickly in a lot of parts of the world than we thought they were going to. Our offices in Hong Kong and Tokyo are more than 50% back to work. We actually opened offices in continental Europe this week. And so, even our office in Milan opened, and Milan was like the epicenter of this. We've got 20% of our people back at the Milan office, and our firm is taking an ultra cautious approach. And frankly, our offices are more dense than the library in a lot of ways, when you think about the square footage. So the other thing I think to keep in mind is, look, we could be unpleasantly surprised at how long it takes for this, to return to something more like that it felt, but we could also be surprised in the other direction. So you could end up in a situation where you lay people off, and 3 weeks or a month later, you're kind of like returning to normalcy. So then you're offboarding people, you're onboarding people, so just that's the other thing that I would highlight.
I'd like to add to Chuck. I think that it's actually one and the same, because it's taxpayer dollars. So either taxpayer dollars are going to come from unemployment or they'll come from the library. But at the end of the day, those people that get paid will either get paid by the library or the taxpayer on unemployment. So if we can keep them where we have them already, then that does alleviate the burden of the country, to Chuck's point, of having to carry an extra couple of workers that the taxpayer already funded in reference to the library.
Agreed.
So Sarah?
Yeah, so I think Chuck made some great points. I think we should just look at the numbers and sort of see where we would be with those 13 people not being paid, and just see where we would be with continuing.
Exactly. That's
what. Because he brings up a good point. If we're fully operational in a couple of months, then we're going to need those people. So
yeah,
I think we should look at it.
And you could try, it sounds like it might be hard, but you could try to see if you can rotate them. It sounds like it's not practical because we don't have enough work, but it could be something you can try to see. I think the other issue, which you brought up, Chuck, is there is an issue for department heads and how to manage this, because it can really work on a staff when some people, in particularly in this environment, where some people are not working and are getting paid, and we are in this environment that you're talking about, Chuck. And so I just think if we decide to do that, it's really the staff, the department heads have to feel not good about that, but they have to understand the reasoning behind it. Because it was their suggestion is they were the ones who really were kind of leaning that way, right, Tom? That wasn't
Not my initial instinct.
That wasn't your initial, right?
Yeah, but I'm not trying to make the department heads the fall guy. They had some really good points that I understood. One of the points, and it really relates to you as a board can speak to it. How do you feel the community would react? If we went either in the direction that I suggested with layoffs and pay our other part-timers for the hours that they work, or we go in the opposite direction, which is to keep our part-time staff on the payroll and pay them whether they're working in the library or not. I mean, would the community accept that? I mean, would there be backlash? I really don't know.
I personally think the
guys think.
backlash
I
of
don't
the
think they
layoffs
care.
is higher.
Yeah, I don't think
Likelihood
they,
is higher.
I agree.
yeah, I think I don't think they think about, I don't see them really, having an opinion one way or the other.
How many part-timers
No,
are we talking about? 13?
13.
13.
15?
Tom, I
13,
think yes,
13.
okay.
I'm just saying there are approximately 13 to go, and approximately 17 will stay at a far reduced
Oh, no, so how many
wage.
part-timers in total? So we're talking like
30,
30.
give or take. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I don't know. Can we start off with just all full-time staff right now, and then continue to pay our part-timers, and then we have time to really look at this, and they'll bring all full-time back, or whatever the capacity is, and then look at this gradually on a gradual basis to give us some time and really see what would be the best strategic approach in how do we rotate, come up with a schedule, a plan as in regards to the part-time staff?
Well, we can certainly do that. And if you want us to keep the part-timers on the payroll, it's easy, we will. But what I would tell you, Daniel, is we can't exclude the part-timers that we need, because we need them. We need the pages to put away the material. We need the clerks to help us, the part-time clerks to help us pull together circulation, to process materials. We have some part-time librarians and children who make essential contributions, every time they appear. So we can't exclude them, pay them, and not have them come in. That's counterintuitive.
Tom, I think the sensitivity of the public to the suggestion you just made would apply if this is an open-ended thing. I mean, if we're just looking for a time-limited period, let's say you do that for just 2 months, just to take 2 months or 3 months, and then we look at the situation after that. This is a terribly fluid situation we are in now. You cannot make any long-term decisions on anything. So if we sort of say, okay, we will pay these part-time workers even if they're not employed for a couple of months, and then we'll revisit the issue after that, I don't think that would raise too much issue.
Oh, and I mean,
and also it would be nice to have, as what in the UN they call the financial implication of keeping these people on.
Yeah.
It is something unacceptable. Is it a huge burden? Probably it's not. Probably just a couple of, I don't know, $1,000 that.
It'd be more than a couple of thousand, but
yeah,
Francis. But
yeah.
I could work with our administrative assistant to try to come up with scenarios. But I mean, what I'm saying is if this is direction the board wants to go in, it's certainly laudable and humanitarian. And I'm not really, I'm not one, I really don't want to argue it. The one thing I do want to say is that we do need many of our part-timers. We need them to come in. We need them to help us get ready to serve the public. I mean, and I don't know how people would feel, if part-timer X works 5 hours a week and that person gets paid 15, and part-timer Y is also getting paid 15 hours, and that person doesn't come in at all.
That doesn't make sense to me, guys. That doesn't.
But is there a way to do some sort of rotation where, like, this group is week 1, this group is week 2, and like back and forth, or whatever it needs to be for density purposes? What I don't know is how fungible the part-time population is in terms of the jobs performed, because I think that's the key question.
Could you repeat that, Chuck? I'm sorry. Just that last part.
I don't know how fungible the jobs, like, if there's 30 part-time people, and you try to rotate them, like how different or similar the jobs are.
The jobs are.
Do something
Can you rotate them? Are the jobs, are they
like somewhat fungible?
I think it's a management nightmare.
You know what?
Nightmare.
You know what? the part-timers have skill sets that are particular to their areas. I mean, a children's librarian knows that area. They may be in false territory to be in reference or in circulation. A page can certainly put away material, and they do it beautifully, but asking them to work in another area isn't viable. So, you know, there are people that can do different things, but I would suggest that our part-timers have a very specific skill set, and they may not be comfortable being placed in another area.
So Tom, I think we'll have another meeting in June, and maybe the directive right now is just to go back and look at this. I can tell you from my standpoint, I actually don't agree with what most of you are saying, in that I'm not sure how you have part of your team working and you're paying for them, and you have the rest of your team not working and you're paying them. I'm not sure how that, I don't know how you manage that. So I'm happy for us to figure that out, but I think we should figure that out, because I don't know how you manage a staff that is at home. And we are in this climate, so we can figure it out, but it's more than just, we're gonna let the part-timers stay and not pay them. There's gotta be more thought to how we do that.
How are we making the decision of who is staying and who's not staying?
Chuck, I really worked with the department heads, and they've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I've had a lot of conversations with them since we came to this decision earlier in the week. And basically it relates to the work that is present when we open on June 1st. We're finding that a lot of our public service librarians, there's not work for them because, you know, they don't need to sit at desk and assist people. We know that, you know, we're keeping our pages because they put away books and we have scads of books. We're keeping some of our part-time CERC people because they can help us check material in. They can help in tech services to link and process all the new material that's been sitting waiting for us to reopen. So it's really been predicated on not favoritism, but really based on the tasks at hand that we see in the next month or so.
And I just don't know how you manage your staff that's coming in. They know there's part-time. To me, it's just a difficult thing to do. So it doesn't mean it can't be done. If you could, Tom, come back to us with how, so it sounds like, and the board can correct, it sounds like the board is saying I'm uncomfortable with laying them off. Am I right? Is that what, Chuck, I'm uncomfortable doing it? So can you go back, Tom, and figure out a way that it works? I don't know if it's a rotate. And you might come back to us, Tom, in 2 weeks and say, guys, this doesn't work. And then we'll have that discussion. We will have.
Or if you want to engage the personnel committee, I mean, we can talk about it too.
Yeah, I would love, you know what, we have a great team of department heads that are thoughtful, have been doing their job for a long time, but I'm more than happy to work with the personnel committee and have their input.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, so if I could just very briefly recap, the idea that we were putting forward, which was the laying off of the 13 people, we will put on hold, A. B, I will re-engage with the department heads, probably at our Monday meeting when we're all back in the library, to talk about how, you know, and I'll give them a heads up ahead of time. How, you know, can we manage this? What's to be done? We could also talk to the personnel committee, but the caveat is, as I hear it, that we will continue with the arrangement that's been in place since we closed on March 13th, which is we will continue to pay our part-time staff the wage, the average wage that they had been receiving since that date. And at the board meeting on, I believe it's June 11th, we can review what we found and we can make a decision. You know,
Or you
one
could
way
go
or the
back-
other.
Yeah, go back to your department heads and say the board's not happy with this. Let's think of another way.
All right, yeah. But meanwhile, I just want to emphasize as I understand it, the part-time staff will continue to be paid as
Yeah.
they've been paid, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, so you guys, I know. So the way we decided, it was on the average of their last. How are we paying them?
Their average of the last 3 months.
Yeah,
I don't know that I'm for that. I kind of just wanted to see like a very simple breakdown of, you know, the costs and then the amount of people, and sort of make a decision sooner than extending what we've been doing for the next 4 weeks.
It's 2 weeks, so we'll have
2 weeks.
in 2 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks. It's 2 weeks. It's just 2 weeks.
Okay.
I think we need 2 weeks to really talk about it, come up with scenarios amongst the department heads, the personnel committee. I'll ask our administrative assistant to look at some numbers too. Sarah, honestly, I think we need a little time so we can come back with some answers, and the board can decide. You know, you can decide.
Oh,
Okay.
Dean provided some information already. It's one more payroll, about $17,500.
But it's already budgeted for, so that's not the issue.
Right.
Do we have the money?
Yeah, it's already budgeted for. That's not the issue. It's really, for me, the issue of how do we manage staff that are not being utilized. How do you manage that with a team? I just don't know. And the other thing is, it's quite possible that employment would be better for them.
That was the thinking. I love Chuck's point, which is, you know, and Corey's point that, you know, that this is taxpayer money any way you slice it. Whether we're supporting folks who are out of work or unemployment is supporting folks who are out of work, you know, it comes from the same general location. As a taxpayer, a huge part of me would be relieved to think that we were not, you know, conducting layoffs. By the same token, I also don't understand, like, how is it fair to be, you know, I'm sitting at home and getting paid my 3 months average salary or, you know, payment, and my colleague is going into work, and we don't want to rotate because maybe the tasks aren't fungible, or maybe want to minimize exposure to each other.
Well, that's the exposure.
Right,
Like, yeah, you've got people coming into work who some of them might not even want to because of the COVID-19 stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's a lot to manage. It's great. And I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think we have to really think about it if we say we're not going to lay off anybody.
Right.
Should we ask who wants to maybe go back to work, get a
Maybe we should
consensus,
ask that.
who would maybe want to come back in versus who doesn't, instead of assuming everyone wants to come back into work?
Do you know, Tom, does everybody want to come back?
I would say most people are,
Itching to get
they're
back.
interested in coming back. I mean, and I'm including both the full and part-time staff. There's also a certain amount of trepidation, anxiety, you know, because Westchester and New Rochelle was very badly hurt. And some people, some of our staff are in risk categories. They're older than 60. They have high blood pressure. They have diabetes. They have some other sort of medical condition. So it's a mixed bag. Lots of people can't wait to get out of the house and get back into the job that they love. But there are other people that have real anxiety about circling back, even if we do all the things we're supposed to do. So it's very individualistic.
And Jean made a really good point. She said, you know, she gave us the number until June 11th for payroll. And she also said, remember, we self-fund our portion of unemployment payments in either way. So we are paying unemployment, or we're paying directly.
We're paying for it.
Right.
Yeah, we will be paying unemployment. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Right.
We're paying for it. Daniel had another question.
Tom, you mentioned that we have a lot of staff that may be at high risk category. And I'm not sure if you mentioned this, part of the plan of returning, are we requiring staff to get tested before they come back? I know a lot of companies are doing that. They just want to clear, because the last thing we want is just to open the doors to have staff, and we may have an asymptomatic COVID person who then brings that back to the library, and then it's a wrap. We got to shut down, disinfect, send people home, and start over.
It's a good point, Daniel. Yeah, it's.
He has an
I
answer.
mean, yeah, no, we had not planned to test people. We were going to take their temperatures. You know, we could maybe try to set up a scenario where we would test.
I think it would be, in my opinion, and I don't know what the board would think. You know, we have the Lockwood side. I know if you reach out to probably the city to arrange for library staff to go to the Lockwood site, and I mean, I just think it would just bring some kind of peace of mind as we start phasing that in. Like I said, I know several businesses, we had to do it even though at my center we were open. We all got tested just to be on the safe side. We got our antibodies tested as well, you know, and you know, it's just a matter, and I know other companies are doing it as well.
Daniel, did you have to go to Lockwood, or did you have them come? Would there be a possibility of them coming to our facility that day, or does it not make sense because we could do the test? And
we actually went to the White Plains Hospital. They do the you get your results in less than 4 minutes for the COVID testing, not the antibody. So myself and Hope Community Services, we split our staff and our volunteers and the National Guard in 2 days, and we got our results by literally by the end of the workday. The results were in our email, so we were able to proceed with our operation and stuff like that. So I think it would be best. They do not need a referral. It's a walk-in. They get their information, and you get the results in literally less than 4 hours.
so we would require our staff to go to a place like White Plains Hospital. Would White Plains Hospital consider coming to? I mean, do you know
It's the whole thing. You don't want them.
I think the
coming.
process
It's
in itself and just the way the containment aspect of it with the hazmat suits and everything, I wouldn't recommend that in having that at the library.
Clearly, you haven't had one of those tests. It's disgusting. It's up your nose.
Yeah,
I haven't.
My best recommendation to just refer staff before we commence and start opening, that they get the results and they email them to you or whomever their supervisor is, and then we proceed. It would be White Plains. I believe that's the only place right now that is doing the quick tests.
So I don't know. I'm not sure they can mail them to. They won't be able to mail them to Tom, the test results.
It's a HIPAA thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't see that. They mail them to you?
You would have to look into it, because a lot of companies, I don't know what the regulation is on that, but I'm not sure if just this particular thing. But I know, like I said, I know hospitals are doing it. I know nonprofit organizations were doing it. So like I said, I would speak to, I guess, our lawyer, see what they suggest and what is the protocol. I don't know if the city is doing anything.
No, he asked Chuck. Tom asked Chuck what they were doing, and they said nothing.
Nothing.
They said nothing. Tom, a couple weeks ago, said, "Are you testing?" And he said no. I mean, I think also, Tom, you might have to talk to the union, unfortunately.
Well, thank you, Deirdre. That was my comment, that we're not functioning in a vacuum. The union at first objected to our taking temperatures, and then they backed off. I don't know what the union would say if we said, you can't come back unless you get a test and we know the result of the test. I mean, I'm not saying it's illogical. I'm not saying
Daniel, I get what Daniel's saying, but I go back into work today on Thursday, or I get tested on Thursday, but maybe I catch it Thursday night and I go to work on Friday.
About the test.
And I'm not being rude, but would you test every day? I mean, it's out of hand. It's just, what are you supposed to do? A test today means nothing next week.
Well, that's why you have the quick test. Everybody do the quick test on one same day. So you know that if you get a negative, you're all clear. So what happens is if someone does come back positive or has those results, you know immediately who was in the building at what time, what day. So you know that you would have to isolate the staff and volunteers or whoever on that particular day with that person who had those symptoms is basically the whole aspect of it.
I think
I get what you're saying about the union and
yeah, and it's by Monday, so
We'd have to postpone our re-entry into the building, that's for darn sure, since Friday's about to start.
yeah.
I'm
no,
not
I
saying
think-
it's a bad idea, I'm thinking out loud.
And how would people feel about going to a hospital? I mean, I would just think that would be exposing you a little bit more.
Yeah, I think people would be
Oh,
anxious.
no, but it's outside. It's not, you're not exposed. You're not exposed. I honestly, I'm not sure we're going to be in the position to tell people they have to get tested. But I want you to talk to Chuck, what are you guys doing at your job?
They're not testing people. They're going to do temperature checks, but no testing.
Yeah.
Temperature
Talk
check
to the-
I was just going to say, sorry, that temperature check seems to be a new standard for
Yep.
return to work.
Yep, and so we were gonna do temperature check. Why don't you talk to your union? I am not suggesting we postpone Monday unless everybody else is. What do you guys, y'all should talk now, because this is important stuff.
I think we go.
Temperature check, and I mean, that's what we're doing. That's a summer camp for kids. So we're doing temperature checks.
Okay.
And the workers have to do temperature checks as well.
You know, I don't doubt that at some point we might be at a place where everybody's being tested every 2 weeks. But until we get to a protocol like that where it's kind of, we're doing it all the time, I'm not sure, I'm not sure it's gonna make a difference. So Tom, Whitney, Dan, Beth, Sarah, I didn't really hear. What do you guys think about Monday? Chuck?
Continue with Monday, and I wonder, could we
Go.
also just vote on the layoff? Do you
Yep.
think that we're sort of decided on that?
Well, he was going to come back to us, so I think he's not going to do everything is as is.
Right, I mean, it's my sense of the board.
I just see that Jean had written,
Provided a
what
response.
the amount was. So I'm just saying I would feel comfortable voting for the layoffs.
Oh,
But
you
I
want to
don't
vote for them now?
Okay.
I
Sarah, I
think
thought you wanted
I
more
think this is
information.
gonna delay things. I think, the more I think about it, the department heads have met X amount of times. I think that it seems like there's a majority here that agrees with the layoffs, and it seems like a lot of thought and a lot of work already went into it by Tom and Jean and the department heads. I just wanted to see what the number was.
So
And Jean just provided that. So
I'm willing to abstain on voting on that until I get more information. I'm willing to kind of wait the 2 weeks.
Yes, I think so.
I think why not, if it's okay,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, Jean
Yeah.
just said, they've been.
Tom, you're not under any pressure to do these things yesterday, are you?
Well,
If
but
you
Sarah,
say
my
I'm not,
point
I'm not,
was-
Francis.
Yeah, so
But
really,
Sarah-
there's no need to rush this. Let's do it.
Well, my
You know-
point was that it's already budgeted for, right? So it's already
is.
budgeted for.
No,
So
it's
this
the
is-
humanitarian aspect of it. It's not the budget. It's the
Right.
human aspect
So,
of it. That's what we're battling with.
so I'm proposing that we vote on it on the 11th when we have more information, given
That's
the
right.
feedback that we're giving to Tom.
That's right.
Does that sit okay with you, Sarah?
Okay.
Okay.
But even if you play devil advocate on that, Sarah, and we voted to
Oh, dear.
thought we
say, hey,
Had a
we'll lay off those workers, those funds are still going to sit in the
majority
library.
that was for doing that.
Right, so Corey, my issue isn't the money. My issue is how do you manage a staff where half the people are home and
Right.
some are here and some are getting paid for now. So my issue isn't the money.
It's really not a financial issue, as you all know,
It's
we
not.
have the
It's not.
money.
It's
It's-
really managing a staff and also we are in this COVID-19 time. So if they're going to do better by unemployment, why wouldn't we do that? Like they might actually do even better. So I just want all the.
Then that creates a perverse dynamic for the people that we kept as well. So like you can play both sides of that
That's
argument.
true too. That's true too.
It's true, Chuck. It's such a complicated issue. It's like an onion where there's another layer always underneath.
Yeah. But we should talk about, we do need to vote on, I think, opening the library back up. So there was a question about testing, and I think everybody said, we're going to vote on it, but just before we get to this vote, I think everybody said, do temperature check and open up. Is that right? Is there more discussion on that?
I feel comfortable opening. I think that Tom has put a lot of work into this plan. I also think that the only way to know how things are working is to try it and to adjust and be open to the fact that things may have to change, that we learned really quickly X, so we are switching to Y strategy. I mean, I think Tom is nimble enough to be able to, work with his staff and figure that out. And he's an expert in this regard, and I trust their process. And I also would love that I think the library is essential. So if people are willing to go back to work and can go back to work, and I support that.
Okay. There's a question. Ed asked a good question. He is in the audience. Good question. Who's going to administer the temperature checks?
It was going to be our guards.
Okay. Okay. And so Ed can he can speak to that during if he wants to speak to that, he can speak to that during public discussion. I'd like to move that we and we'll have public discussion after this. I'd like to move that we open the library for limited service. Actually, not even. Let me think about it. I'd like to move that we open the library so the staff can come in on June 1st to set up for the eventual opening of limited service.
I second.
Make a motion. Oh,
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
You can open. And now it's time for public to be heard. So I don't know if Ed wants to say something. He is our only, let me see, it's Ed, Jean, and Jessica. So Ed, I'm going to allow you to talk. So.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Hi there.
Good.
Good.
So I've watched the whole board meeting tonight. It's been a very exciting board meeting. I've learned, and I just want to say, as a staff member, I've learned a tremendous amount from watching you all tonight and seeing the discussions. Because at least for me personally, and again, we're on our we're obviously quarantined like everyone else. We have 2 school-age kids, so we've got a distance learning plan happening every single day here. So it's hard to keep up with everything, but I learned a tremendous amount tonight listening to you all in terms of the reopening procedures and guidelines and really plans, because that's what they are at this point. And I don't know, because again, everything has been very fragmented. Have all of the staff been informed of all of these guidelines in terms of temperature check, all the safety protocols as far as temperature checks? Obviously, I'm assuming so. I know I did know about that one. COVID-19 testing, this is the first time I heard about it. It's an interesting concept. Obviously, I don't know whether or not there's been any discussion with other members of the staff regarding this. And regarding any other health matters that some members of staff may have. So I was just curious, are all the staff on the same page, I guess is what I want to know. And again, we haven't, obviously, since we've all been home, although we've had periodic department meetings, I know we haven't definitely had any union meeting among our members, although we have been in talks with our rep. And obviously I know that Rob and Tom have done a fantastic job at, keeping communication open and keeping a conversation going on. But I'm just wondering, again, some of these things are sort of new to me tonight, and I'm wondering whether or not they're going to be new to others when they find out about it. And that's 3 days prior to when they're asked to return. So does anyone want to offer any kind of feedback? I'm just curious to hear where you guys
I will, Ed. First of all, COVID-19 testing was never a discussion until it was brought up at the board meeting tonight. So that is new. As far as the temperature testing, I know you're an officer in the union, and Rob and I have had extensive conversations about this issue, and he knew that I thought it was important to do. I know he had conversations with union leaders, and their reaction was originally negative, but the staff, the department heads, Rob and other people were in favor of it. And so I was under the impression that that was communicated to everybody, that they knew that this was going to be happening. We have really tried to keep the lines of communication open. Every week we have a department heads meeting. I know departments have had their own meetings. I know community relations had a meeting as recently as 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Tomorrow we have a 10 o'clock meeting with adult services. I'm there. 1 o'clock meeting with children's. I'm there. 3 o'clock meeting with circulation. I'm there. And also we've had individual conversations with staff. I mean, I've spoken today to Jean, to Rob, to Kira, and somebody else. And yesterday I met with Beth Mills and Beth Gollum. So we have been talking and communicating and emailing and sharing. I sent to the department heads and the board president the reentry plan that I wrote and asked them to share with the staff. So I think there's been communication, and I think we've tried to do as much as possible to keep everybody on board. But Ed, you know, it's frankly a very fragmented time where people such as yourself with young children are dealing with education, with entertainment, and other things. So it's been a challenge. I will not deny it.
And again, my question was really sort of directed more at the COVID-19, because that's the first time I heard of it, the test. And again, just as as an individual, as an employee of the library, it's an interesting idea. I don't know how I feel about it. Like I said, it's literally the first time I heard about it tonight. That's why I was inquiring. So it sounds like obviously it's not something that had ever come up at one of any of those meetings that you just referenced, right? And I'm thinking about it now, and I'm saying to myself, is that a good idea? Maybe. Is it something that we will want to have in place? Obviously, you guys already voted on it. It's not necessarily a requirement, but it might be something to think about as an additional safety mechanism. And that's just my 2 cents as a member of the public as well.
Maybe in the future. I mean, if we're opening on Monday, I'm not adverse. I would want to talk to your union president, Rob.
Yeah, of course.
Because there's nothing, and I would want to talk to our attorney. We need to. Exactly. Those are two essential components. Yeah. But I would not be adverse to, if all the parties were in alignment, to maybe have testing. I would love to have the testing come to the library, or if we could go to one of the local sites.
Yeah, maybe that's something that we can get staff input on. I mean, I think this is just my own personal opinion. I think everyone has their health concerns at the forefront. So as long as no one feels like they're taking an inherent risk with their health, and all safety and protocols that can be taken are taken, I think people are going to be okay with that. Again, that's my 2 cents, but that's all I have to say. So again, I think you guys are doing a great job. Thank you again very much. I learned a tremendous amount watching you all tonight. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
He's our only public to be heard. So with that, we are going to have our June 11th meeting. I actually think the building won't be open by then, or it will. It won't be. Our building.
It won't be.
So expect that our next June 11th meeting will be by Zoom. But I don't have anything else. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
Nope.
I do want to tell you, I think I told you we did get money to do hotspots. So I know that Tom has not had a time to kind of keep going with this, but we will be getting some hotspots. We got money from the foundation. I don't know if we ever followed, I don't know what the, kind of where you are with RXR, but we're moving along that path.
Deirdre, we did receive 2,000 from WOLS for Wi-Fi hotspots and an additional approximately 11,000 from the foundation. I actually waited on going forward with RXR because I wanted to find out with the monies that we have, could we circle back and get a more discounted rate through education? And I discovered that it was possible, but that the conditions were not maybe viable for us. So Daniel Ojiri, who's our IT librarian, and I have been emailing today about moving forward with purchasing the hotspots for the money that we have. And now that I know that we're the road we're taking, I'm planning to work on the RXR grant maybe as soon as tomorrow.
Okay.
Between those 3 meetings.
Okay. And he had and Tom had a great call with the superintendent, and she gave him some numbers, and so we know where we're going.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's very exciting.
Anybody else have anything else to add? All righty. This was longer than I thought. I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstention.
Who did that?
Abstention, I said.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too.
Everybody,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Stay safe.